Good morning. This is Assemblywoman Petrie-Norris. Thanks so much for joining us for today's Facebook Live Town Hall. The 2020 election is just 42 days away. And as I talk to voters all across Orange County, I know people have a lot of questions about voting in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are really fortunate today to have two incredible guests who are here to answer all of your questions. Today we are joined by Alex Padilla, our Secretary of State. Thank you so much for being here. And we're also joined by Neal Kelley, who's the Orange County Registrar of Voters. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for joining us. Before we jump into questions, can you just take a few minutes to introduce yourself to the folks at home? Secretary Padilla.
Sure. Well, thank you, Assembly Member, for convening us. We know it's a timely and consequential election. This happens to be National Voter Registration Day, so perfect opportunity for us to have this conversation. I'm Alex Padilla, honored to serve as Secretary of State of California, and despite a broader portfolio than a lot of people imagine, I do serve as California's Chief Elections Officer. So help oversee the administration of elections in California, but frankly, have brought a philosophy of trying to increase participation rates on the voter registration side, on the voting side, to make sure our democracy is more representative of the people. And to do so and to do it well, I partner with the incredible Neal Kelley, the Orange County Registrar of Voters, and his 57 counterparts throughout the state of California, and looking forward to sharing all the information voters need to know to be ready and participate this November.
Thank you, Secretary. And Neal Kelley, thank you for being here.
Assembly Member, thank you for having me. I can't say it much better than Secretary Padilla always does, which is great. Just excited as the Registrar of Voters for Orange County and the Chief Election Official for the county to start serving voters here just in a few weeks, getting ready to mail out voter guides this week and ballots in a couple of weeks. So thank you so much for having me.
So we are in the midst, as we all know, we are in the midst of an unprecedented global health crisis, COVID-19. Secretary, what should voters expect in the midst of this crisis?
So as if there wasn't plenty enough reasons to make sure you were registered and voting this November when the year started, we have been hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, feeling its health impacts, its economic impacts. And just like we can't go to the grocery store the same way anymore, we're making adjustments to how we administer the elections to let people exercise their right to vote while protecting their health and that of their loved ones. So the good news is you'll have multiple options for how to cast your ballot this November. The first big thing to be aware of is, statewide, we made the decision to ask counties to send every active registered voter a ballot by mail in advance of the November election. There's probably no more convenient and now safest way to vote than from the comfort and safety of your own home. So the first week of October, start looking for the ballot in your mailbox if you're already an active registered voter. If you haven't registered to vote, by the way, today's the day to do it. Go to vote.ca.gov and you can register to vote there. We are asking voters that are already registered, by the way, to verify their registration status. Want to make sure your information is current and up to date. Before Mr. Kelley mails you your ballot, want to make sure that we're sending it to the correct address. And you can do that at vote.ca.gov as well. So when you get that ballot in the mail, you will have options for how to return the ballot. I still recommend mailing it back. The Postal Service, despite recent news, I think is pretty reliable still. And return postage is prepaid, so you don't even have to worry about finding stamps. You do have the option of delivering your ballot to any ballot drop box in the county convenient to you in the weeks leading up to the election, or to walk it in person and deliver it to any in-person voting location either on or before Election Day. So those are your options for returning the ballot. Want to make a plug for Where's My Ballot? Because a lot of people wonder, did my ballot ever get there? Did it get counted? At vote.ca.gov, you click on Where's My Ballot and subscribe to get automated alerts either by text message, by email, or by phone call on the status of your ballot when it's working its way through the postal delivery process. So you'll get a message from the county when it's been sent to you, all the way to the tail end with the county confirming when they received the ballot and when your ballot was counted.
Okay, so vote.ca.gov is a super important website. You can check your registration, you can check the status of your ballot vote.ca.gov. And so, Neal, I know that you and your office have been working really hard to get all this information out to Orange County voters so that everybody understands where they can vote, when they can vote, and how the process is going to work this year. I think you've got a video that provides a really good overview. If you want to share that with the folks at home, that would be great.
Absolutely. And just as a quick introduction, we have a very robust campaign that starts actually this week, reaching all of our 1.7 million voters through a $3 million outreach campaign. And this is one of our broadcast commercials that I want to share with you just briefly that talks about the options.
Voting from home using your ballot that comes in the mail. Return your ballot at a secure drop-off or at a vote center or through the mail. No matter which option you choose, voting is easy and secure. To learn more, visit ocvote.com.
So I don't think the folks at home could probably hear the sound, but we could imagine the narration there. So it's essentially, as Secretary Padilla said, we can vote at home, you can vote at vote centers, or you can vote on election day. What are some of the key points you want to make sure that our Orange County voters know about their options?
Right. So there's a couple of things. One, coming up here just in a few days, we're going to be mailing out voter guides to all 1.7 million voters. That's going to start on Thursday. And that is a really important document because it includes a practice sample ballot that people can pre-mark if they'd like to. And there's really good information there about COVID-19 options. The other is, as the Secretary pointed out, we'll start mailing mail ballot packets to all 1.7 million voters on October the 5th. And that's a really important date to keep in mind. We have done a tremendous amount of work over the last 6 months to provide secure and safe options for voters if they choose to vote in person. We'll have Assemblymember 170 vote centers located throughout Orange County. Voters can choose to vote at any location. Will be open from October the 30th through November the 3rd. At ocvote.com, they can just click on the vote center link and it will give them an interactive map that they can find a location closest to them. And then just real briefly, I want to talk about the drop boxes that the Secretary mentioned. We have 116 secure ballot drop boxes installed throughout the county, one probably very close to where you live or work. And we check those boxes and collect that in those ballots daily. And we track the ballot, just like the Secretary pointed out. When we take it out of that box, it will go down to the data level of, we picked up your ballot from box 42 as an example. So it really gives a lot of confidence to the voters to know where their ballot is in the process. And I think that's very important.
It is so important because I think people do have a lot of questions right now about election security. So Secretary Padilla, vote by mail ballots, are they safe and secure?
Absolutely. Look, California has a long experience with vote by mail. I mean, if we really want to go back to the genesis of vote by mail, we go back to the Civil War. But I think more specifically, no excuse vote by mail has been growing in popularity for the last couple of decades. And just to give you an example, in the March primary, more than 70% of ballots cast statewide were vote by mail ballots. So Californians have come to trust vote by mail. It is convenient, and yes, it is secure. One of the key reminders, and it's an important part of the security measures and safeguards that we have for vote by mail, is the signature. When you get your vote by mail ballot in the mail, it comes with an official return envelope. So after you fill out your ballot, you place it in the official envelope, seal it, and sign it in the designated space. The very first thing that Neal's team does, and this is the case statewide, is they check the signature on that envelope compared to the signature on file as part of your voter registration record, as part of confirming the identity of the voter. If you forget to sign the envelope or the signatures don't match, then the county will attempt to contact you and correct whatever issue there may be. So if you need to update your signature, you forgot to sign it, you can sign after the fact because we want your vote to count. And any voter who says, wait a minute, that wasn't me, well, then that's something else that we'll have to look into. But it's one of many safeguards in place to ensure the integrity of vote by mail.
And so you mentioned that there's this process of signature verification where the registrar's office, Neal's team will compare the signature that you've got on the voter registration card to the signature on the vote by mail ballot. So Neal, can you just walk us through what happens if your team sees that there's a mismatch of those signatures?
That's a great question. One of the things that we do immediately is to start a second review. And there's another team that will look at that ballot and make a determination. And it doesn't stop there. If they feel that that signature doesn't match, it will go to a third team. And that third team makes a final decision. And they bring it to me if I need to make a decision. But the point is that at that third team, if it doesn't match, that letter goes out to the voter and they will have almost to the end of November to cure that issue, about 2 days before we certify the election. So lots of opportunities for them to cure it.
Okay, so people don't need to be worried that somehow their vote's not going to count because their signature doesn't match. If there's an issue, your office will notify voters so that they can make sure that they can, as you said, cure the issue and ensure that their vote will count.
That's correct. And I think California is way ahead of the curve on this issue for sure.
And Secretary, we've also been hearing a lot in the news about concerns with the USPS, with the Postal Service. Can you just help us understand what are you concerned about that as we look at the weeks ahead?
I'm going to be precise here in my response. Am I concerned? Yes. Am I panicking? No. The good thing is that because of our long experience with vote by mail, we have longstanding relationships with regional and local Postal Service representatives. So what's going on at the top of the organization is one thing, but in California, not just my office, but Neal and his counterparts across the states have direct relationships with Postal Service representatives to ensure the timely flow of ballots both to voters and back to the county. It's another great reason, by the way, why this ballot tracking tool under Where's My Ballot is so helpful both for voters to see that transparency of the ballot moving, the confirmation when it's been received, but it provides a tool for us to identify any delays or bottlenecks in the Postal Service so we can address that with a particular processing facility, a local branch, maybe even down to the carrier routes. So I still think it's a reliable option for returning your ballots. And I think it's worth mentioning a couple of the timeframes involved here as well. If you're registered to vote, no later than October 5th, the county will mail you your ballot. That's 4 weeks before the election. And so even if there's a little bit of a delay on the outbound side, you're going to get your ballot with ample time to fill it out and return it. Current law in California says as long as your ballot is postmarked on or before election day, it can arrive even 3 days after the election and still be counted. We're extending that deadline for this November to 17 days after the election, just in case there are the unanticipated delays to the Postal Service. We don't want somebody to lose their voting rights through no fault of their own if there's delays at the USPS. So we're allowing extra time for those ballots to arrive and still be counted as long as it's postmarked on or before election day. But for the ample transparency and peace of mind, sign up for Where's My Ballot.
Okay, Where's My Ballot? And so Neal, if you said that ballots are going to be going out to Orange County voters on October 5th. If people don't get their ballot, say a week later, what should they do?
So there's two options that they have. One, they could go to our website at ocvote.com/replacement, and they will have a very clear form that they can use to get a replacement ballot, or they can call my office at 714-567-7600. And the good thing here is that if they don't get that second ballot, we don't want to keep putting that voter through a lot of hassles. There's a new option here in California because of COVID-19 where we can now offer a remote accessible system to all voters in Orange County where they can access their ballot online, mark it, and then print it out and send it out to us. So really, there's not going to be an issue where we can't get them their ballot.
Okay, and and to find out more about that remote access system, it's just ocvote.com is the best place to start.
Correct. ocvote.com on our homepage, or if they want to go specifically to that page, it's ocvote.com/RAVBM.
Okay. And so we've got a couple of questions from people at home about in-person voting. So, someone had sent us a note saying, I get that you want me to vote by mail, but I don't like voting by mail. I want to do it in person. So Neal, can you just recap us, what you shared in terms of the options that Orange County residents are going to have for in-person voting this fall? When are votes? Because it's not election day anymore. It's kind of, almost election month.
Sure.
Can you just give us a summary of when are vote centers opened and how can people find out about an in-person location near them?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And I'm sensitive to that. I understand some voters still would like to vote in person, and we're ready for them. Our vote centers will open on October the 30th. They will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. all the way through Election Day, November the 3rd. And that day will be open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. 170 locations throughout the county. Again, one probably very close to where you live or work. And those locations will have an array of safety measures in place to protect not only our voters, but our staff, to make sure that they can cast their ballot safely, all the way down to disposable pens for their ballot. So no longer will they have to reuse pens. I think we've thought of everything, hopefully. Clear signage, clear markings on the floor. And if they go to ocvote.com, right on that homepage, they click the vote center link, they'll be able to type in their address and it will give them the closest vote center to them. So there's just lots of options around the county.
Okay, excellent. And Secretary Padilla, will voter registration on Election Day be an option in California this year?
Absolutely. And before I answer that, let me just add a couple of things about the in-person voting options. And so it's the beauty of vote centers. I think, as Neal mentioned earlier, voters have the option of voting anywhere in the county convenient to them. So you can plug in your home address and see which is the closest vote center, or maybe you prefer to vote closer to where you work. So again, you can plug that address in and find the vote centers closest to your place of employment. Or if you're out and about running errands on the weekends, at any point you can find the vote center closest to where you are. And some of the more high profile vote centers, Neal, I know you were bragging last week about the Honda Center signing on as a voting location. Another location near and dear to my heart, the Discovery Cube, just off the 5 freeway, is serving as a voting location. But to your question about registration, that's why, number one, if you haven't done it already, do it today. Go to vote.ca.gov and register to vote. We do have a formal voter registration deadline of October 19th. After that date, if you haven't registered by then, if you put it off too long, you can show up in person at any vote center starting October 30th and register to vote in person, or update your registration in person and still be able to cast your ballot. It's going to cause a little bit more work and time for Neal and his team on the back end, but we'll go that extra mile to make sure that if you're eligible, that you can cast your ballot and have your ballot counted this election.
Okay. So if you haven't registered to vote, today's the day to do it, but you can register up and until November 3rd, Election Day. So Secretary Padilla, as you said, we've made some changes to ensure that every vote is counted, including extending the date when ballots can be received by the registrar until, like you said, 17 days after the election. So, what should folks at home be expecting on election night? Is it going to take us a long time to count ballots this year? And I'd love your perspective, Secretary, and then yours, Mr. Kelley.
Nothing new for Orange County, through no fault of Neal's, but I'll explain why even that's a little bit different this year. Just an abundant reminder, if you're mailing your ballot back, it has to be postmarked on or before Election Day. We're giving it more time to arrive, but it must be postmarked on or before Election Day. Now, in terms of how long it's going to take to get some results here, right? California is no stranger for it taking a long time to finish counting ballots. First and foremost, because we have so many more voters in California than any other state in the nation. But if you think about everything we've shared on this town hall, the signature verification process, the ability to do same-day registration, which the registration has to be processed before the ballots are counted. Even after election workers finish counting ballots, after they've all arrived, every county is required to conduct a post-election audit of the ballots before we certify results. So here's the bottom line. Come election night, we have a decent sense for how most contests are going to turn out. But for close contests, and for final numbers, it's going to take us a few more weeks. And that's okay. I mean, we saw it play out in November of 2018 with the 4 House seats in Orange County that took a long time to finish counting ballots. So if that happens again this year, it's not time to panic. It's just time to be patient and know it's the process at work. The difference this year is that for the first time, a lot of other states that are just now expanding vote by mail significantly, and it may take them longer than historically to finish counting the ballots. Places like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, et cetera, states that are very consequential in the presidential contest. So it's a presidential election year. Eyes are who's going to be the president for the next 4 years. If that race is too close to call on election night and it takes a few more days, again, not time to panic. It's time to be patient and trust the process. We'd rather get it right than get it fast.
Absolutely. And Neal, can you walk us through the vote tallying process that you and your team go through? You know, just sort of give the folks some sense of why sometimes it does take a week or even longer to know who the final winner is.
Sure, absolutely. And one of the things I wanted to start off with was a few days after the primary, when COVID really started to explode, the first thought that came in my mind was we could have an all-mail ballot election in the fall. So I immediately ordered additional automation equipment and scanning equipment. We've now doubled our capacity from where we were in the primary, which is great news because we're going to be in a really good position for volume. But when your ballot arrives in our facility, it goes through a process with checks and balances that are in place to ensure that the integrity of your ballot and to make sure that that ballot is the individual that's casting that vote. And we want to make sure of that before we open it. Think about this. It takes about 48 hours for a single ballot to transit through the system because of all the checks and balances. This is really important to make sure that the vote is handled accurately and fairly through that entire process. So to Secretary Padilla's point, we will have everything processed up to election morning. What I post on election night at 8:05 will be every single ballot I've received up to that point. The unknown is how many people will drop off or mail ballots on election day, like the Secretary mentioned. And then you just start that process over again the next day. So I'm anticipating a faster process for us in Orange County, but certainly I would echo his comments about being patient for sure.
Okay. Well, and I know for both of you, the integrity of this election and of every election is of paramount importance. Secretary, following the 2016 election, you opened a new office called the Election Cybersecurity and Office of Enterprise Risk Management. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you and your team have been doing there?
Sure. In a few minutes that we have left, so I'll try to be brief here. But it's basically having learned from the 2016 experience. You know, people have concerns about the integrity of the elections, the security of our elections, and so what else do we need to be doing? If you look at the 2016 experience and the Mueller report, et cetera, it's really sort of in two buckets that we have ramped up our efforts. Number one, the security of our infrastructure. Working again with Neal and his colleagues throughout the state, we've helped every county in California either upgrade or replace the voting systems that they've been using to newer systems that are tested and certified to meet higher security standards. So we can literally say we have the safest voting infrastructure of any state in the nation, right? We require paper ballots, a voter verified paper audit trail, our voting systems cannot be connected to the internet, so we keep it make it impossible to systematically hack or rig the election. Every county has to conduct the post-election audits after every election. So we go the extra mile on securing our infrastructure. But that's different than the threat of election misinformation and disinformation. And that's a lot of what we learned the hard way in 2016, and we continue to confront. We did in 2018, and we're continuing to confront it today. And so part of the Office of Election Cybersecurity is both proactive tools, trying to get to voters, the information that they need to be able to register and vote. And that if you have any questions or need information about the process, don't just trust anything in your Twitter feed or on your Facebook page. Go to the official source, your county elections department or the California Secretary of State. We're also trying to monitor social media platforms ourselves to identify any misleading or erroneous information and working with social media companies to address those. And there's even a mechanism for the general public to report something that they think may be suspicious. So a lot that we're working on to ensure that
Mhm.
not only is the voting process and system safe and secure, but that most importantly, people have the confidence they deserve in the election process.
Well, I think that I think the point you made, particularly around ensuring that our voting system here in California cannot be hacked, are going to be very, I think, encouraging to people at home. Neal, is there anything you'd add in terms of what you and your team have been doing here in Orange County?
I will tell you, just since 2016, we've doubled our security efforts, both on the network side as well as the physical security. We work very closely with Homeland Security, the FBI, our local law enforcement fusion center, the Secretary of State. It is a robust security plan, both from, like I said, physical to the network aspect. And I can just assure our voters that, like the Secretary said, California is the safest in the nation, in my opinion. It's a daily task. This is something we can't lose sight of, but it's very important to point out that this is a secure system.
Yep.
Right, and I know both you both have gone to really Herculean, and your teams have gone to Herculean efforts to ensure that we are staying one step ahead of folks that might want to mess with the system and mess with the integrity of this election. So that's certainly reassuring to me, and I'm grateful for everything that you and your teams have done in that fight. So we're about at the end of our time. Before we go, just are there any parting words for the folks at home before we wrap up? Secretary Padilla.
No, thank you again for the discussion. It's timely, it's important. There's a lot more questions we could have gotten to, I'm sure, but I think the answer to the vast majority of them can be found at vote.ca.gov. Again, register to vote today. If you haven't done so already, verify your registration status, update your registration. If necessary, sign up for Where's My Ballot and track your ballot through the process. If there's anything else, maybe a plug on behalf of Neal, and that is the need for some additional poll workers. Neal's always among the most prepared registrars in the state, but I know COVID has impacted our poll workforce like we haven't seen in the past. A lot of the seniors and retirees that have helped in prior elections aren't available this November. So anybody who's able and willing, sign up to be a poll worker at vote.ca.gov. The county will reach out to you, provide the training, the PPE to keep you safe, and a stipend that I'll let Neal talk about, because poll workers do get a compensation for their service.
Well, thank you, Secretary. Neal, parting thoughts for folks at home.
Yeah, just encouraging people to get out there and be engaged and vote in the process. We include, I think one of the most important things in your ballot packet is an I voted sticker that people wear with pride here in Orange County, and just looking forward to engaging with voters. And just a quick comment on Vote Center employees. We are still recruiting for those individuals, ocvote.com/jobs, or the website the Secretary pointed out. And we are in the last home stretch as we get ready to open for October 30th. And if you had 30 seconds and you were willing to take a chance on me, Assembly Member, I know why that audio didn't play. So I would love to end with that, if that's possible.
That's perfect. Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
Thank you both for joining us. And that's a perfect way to close.
Thank you. And here it goes.
Voting has never been easier or more convenient, and now you have more options than ever. You can vote in person at any of nearly 170 vote centers starting on October 30th. Or you can avoid the crowds by voting from home using your ballot that comes in the mail. Return your ballot at a secure drop box or at a vote center or through the mail. No matter which option you choose, voting is easy and secure. To learn more, visit ocvote.com.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining us. To everybody at home, 2020 has certainly been a year unlike any other, but thanks to the tireless work of our Registrar, Neal Kelley, and our Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, and their teams, they're ensuring that the 2020 election will go smoothly and that your vote will be counted and your voice will be heard. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again soon.